Hey guys, welcome to the Mom Show. I'm your host, Courtney Doyle, and this is a place I am giving you permission to not have it all together. Welcome back to the Mom Show. Today, my guest is Kayla Cook. Kayla, I start every episode with one simple statement, which is help. I'm a mom, and I'd like for you to fill in the blank.
Yeah, Courtney, thank you for having me. Help. I'm a mom who is living with secondary infertility.
That's a hard place to be. How old is your first child?
Our daughter is 7. She is a first grader. We are winding down that first grade year. She's become a little reader. So it's a fun time.
Oh, yeah, it is a fun time when their little, just their imagination starts to grow because they're reading and they start getting big. And then you're like, oh no, she can read everything now.
That's exactly right. My husband and I were spelling something in the kitchen, and she
Yeah.
yells from around the corner, "What comes after the R?" And I was like, "What?" And I come around the corner, and she had a pencil and a piece of paper, and she was writing
Mhm.
on the letters. And I was like, "Oh no, we are going to have
Oh,
to come
yeah.
up with something a little bit different." I was not prepared, was not ready.
Yeah. Yeah. We've transitioned. Now she knows our secret code language.
That's right.
Yeah. That's cute. That's sweet. And it's a sweet time for kiddos when they grasp the concept of being able to read. It's such an empowering moment for them to gain that confidence.
Oh yeah,
So, yeah,
yeah,
that's
it's fun.
fun. So, let's talk secondary infertility. Tell me a little bit
Yes.
about your story.
Yeah. So once upon a time, this goes 9 years back, 2016. My husband and I had been married for a couple of years. And as people do when they've been married a couple of years, decide that it is time to add to your family, to grow our family. And pretty quickly, I realized that something was not quite right with my body. I didn't know what it was yet. I went to my OBGYN at the time. This was the end of 2016, and quite frankly just felt really dismissed, not listened to. His answer was basically that we were young and healthy and we're fine.
Mm,
And sir, I'm telling you, something's not fine. But he
mm.
basically said, "You're young, you're healthy, I'm not worried." I was worried. So I called a different OBGYN who is still my doctor today on the way home and made an appointment to see him really as soon as 2017 started. And so I saw him, and he let me know, he gave me the same song and dance about being young and healthy, but I did feel listened to and I did feel cared for. And I did feel that he was actually wanting to help, wanting to hear what we had to say. And he said, "Look, you are young, you are healthy. Let's give this until your annual appointment in the spring. If you are not pregnant by your annual appointment in the spring, we will do some investigating to figure out why. But I fully expect that you will be. So I'll see you
Mm.
then." And I said, "Okay, great." Spoiler, I was
Now,
not.
I'm going to pause you.
Yeah,
Oh,
go
at
ahead.
that point, you knew something wasn't right. What, without
Correct.
you having to share any very
Sure.
intimate details,
Sure.
what was telling you? Like, how did you know something's not right here? This is not
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah. So I had not had a cycle from October, and it was the middle of December. But all of my pregnancy tests were negative. And so I was like,
Mm,
"Okay, my pregnancy tests are negative. It's been over 60 days and my
okay.
pregnancy tests are negative, but I still don't have a cycle. So something's happening here." And that first doctor's answer was basically to write me a prescription to make me have a period. And he did no exam. There was no ultrasound. There was no blood work. There was no urine sample. There was nothing. It was like a 5-minute convo. "Here's your
Mm,
prescription. Go with God." And I was like, I don't have a
right.
problem with medications if that's what needs to happen. I just feel like we need to do a few things before we get there. Like I
Yeah,
need to
this
kind
isn't
of
the
initiate.
norm.
Correct. And the answer can't just be, "Here's a pill that'll make it happen." So when I saw my new doctor, who is still my doctor now, he told me that, look, that's not necessarily the wrong approach. I may
Mhm.
would have ended in the same place. I just would have done a couple of other things before that, which
Yeah.
really was my ask.
Yeah.
I didn't think he was necessarily wrong for writing that prescription, for thinking that was the path forward. I just felt like we needed to do a little more investigation before we jump to that step. That's what I
Mhm.
would have preferred. And so when I was not pregnant that spring, we started doing a lot of blood work. He said, "Okay, this is going to be our step 1A." And so in doing so, you have to have blood drawn on certain days of your cycle. It has to
Mhm.
be exactly this day, exactly this time. And so I Got to drive the 30 minutes to their office uptown Charlotte multiple days throughout the month. And we figured out pretty quickly that I was not ovulating.
Okay.
And that's important when you want to
Yeah.
have a baby.
Yeah.
And so he said the good news is that there are medication options that we can make you ovulate and see if this will work. He walked me through the two different options, let me know the risks and benefits of both. Let me pick and said, I'm comfortable with both of these. These are the risk and benefits of this one. These are the risk and benefits of that one. Think about it, look into it, pray about it, do what you want to do. And so I picked one. And he told me from the beginning, he said, now look, you'll have to come back again and do the same blood work again because we're going to see if it's working. We're going to start you on the lowest dose. If it doesn't, then we can increase it. This is no guarantee that you're going to get pregnant. It just gives you the same chance as everybody
Yeah.
else. So we'll do this for a little bit and then we'll see how that goes. So I did ovulate, and that very month I got pregnant with our daughter, and she is 7 now. And
Wow.
so we didn't expect it to work that quickly. We were really thankful that it did, but that was surprising.
So we've had the first
So we've had the
baby,
first baby.
little bit of
Yes,
intervention, needed a little bit of help in the
correct.
ovulation department.
Correct.
Quick pregnancy, good
Yeah.
pregnancy, healthy
Yeah.
baby.
Yeah.
Now she's
Great
a couple
pregnant.
years old, and I'm
Right.
assuming y'all are like, let's do this again.
Yeah. So very like end of 2019, early 2020, I was having a lot of pain. We were suspecting maybe some endometriosis type deal that
Yeah.
runs in my family. And that's only diagnosed surgically. That's really, there's
Yeah.
no other testing really that we can do. And so I saw that same doctor and he said, let's do it. So February 2020, I had this laparoscopy done. And he said, the good news and the bad news is I don't see anything. So the bad news is I don't know why you're in pain. The good news is you look great. So if y'all want to have another baby, let's do it. And I was like, okay, that sounds great. And so we started trying for a second baby. March 2020 happened to all of us.
Yeah.
And so we were fine if it took a little while. We were like, we may not even be here.
Yeah.
What is the
Yeah. Like
world
what's
even
even
doing?
happening?
We
Yeah.
don't even know. So we were fine if it took a little while. But we looked up in the spring of 2021 and realized, oh, it's been a year. Oh, it's been a year.
Yeah.
And my husband and I talked about, prayed about, and thought about what to do. And we had a big family trip planned that September to take our daughter to Disney World for the first time. And it was a big family, my parents, my sister and her family, our brother. And so we said, okay, here's what we'll do. We will go on this trip, have a great time. And then when we get back, we will make an appointment with our doctor and see about starting on the same protocol again, see what may
Hmm.
be going on here. Okay, great. Around that time, my cycle started getting super irregular again, but I had done this before. So I was like, tis the PCOS season. That's just what it is.
Right.
And so that September 2nd, we found out we were pregnant again. No intervention, no medicine, no nothing. So we were shocked and surprised. We see my doctor, and his first question was, did you mean to be here?
Mhm.
And so we kind of laughed and we were like, mostly we did. We just didn't, at this point, we had thought it wouldn't happen for us yet. And so I was measuring much earlier than they thought I should be. But that's not uncommon with PCOS, with irregular cycles, because all of this is based on the date of your last cycle start. If
Yeah.
it's been 2 months, who knows when you actually ovulated? And so we weren't tracking it with medication like we were before. And I had to come back for blood work for several days, and my numbers were doubling the way they wanted them to. And I thought, oh, it was just irregular. It wasn't. But just a couple weeks later, I had a miscarriage.
Mm.
And yeah, that's really hard to process when it came out of nowhere. And
Hmm.
then as soon as it came out of nowhere, it was also gone. So we processed that for a little while. I saw him again. This is early 2022 now. I go back to my doctor to make sure all is well. And it is. And he says, here's the deal. I'm gonna write you this prescription for the same medication we used before. What y'all do with it is totally up to you. If
Hmm.
you want to use it, you can start it the day 3 as soon as you want to. If you decide you want to hang on to it for a little while, I'm good with that. But we know that this works for your body. We know this works well. When you decide to do it, we'll do the labs and all of that. So we started that medication in February of 22. We did that February, March, April, May, June. In July, I saw him again. And at this point, we're out of his scope. And so he refers us to our first fertility clinic. We've been to two. I go to the first fertility clinic. We do all sorts of testing and workups and all of these things. August and September of 22, with the plan to start treatment in October of 22, but I didn't have a cycle that month. And so you have to wait until you start again because it's all very sensitive. In November, we leveled up our treatment plan a little bit. Did that in November of 22. It didn't work. We missed our December cycle for a number of reasons and then decided, okay, we just need to pause here. So we paused the first half of 23, went back to my doctor and said, that first clinic was not what we hoped. Will you refer us somewhere else? And so he did. So July of 23, we started at this new clinic. We did treatment with them August, September, October of 23. None of those worked. We decided to pause for the holidays of 24 and 25 because it is just really time sensitive. Like, I don't care if you have a meeting with the Queen of England. If they say this treatment is Tuesday at 10 a.m. and you're supposed to be having tea with the Queen, then you either have to cancel the tea or you wait till next month. Like, those are your options. And so it was really stressful. We're both reasonably flexible in our schedules, but it was still extremely stressful. So we decided we did not want to spend our holidays that way and decided to pause November, December, January of 24. And then February of 24 had a conversation of, look, I think it's time that we just let this go and surrender this to the Lord. And so that's where we have been the last year and some change, is really just leaving it up to the Lord to do what he does.
I'm going to go back a little bit
Sure.
because the first time felt a little hard, but then it was really easy.
Yeah.
And the next rounds are getting more and more difficult on you
Yeah.
physically, on you emotionally,
Yeah.
spiritually. But looking at this situation as a whole right now, you've been on pause for a minute. It's very interesting. I asked on Instagram just this week for, hey, what are some things that you have experienced or that you want to hear me talk about on this show? And I had an overwhelming response of women saying miscarriage.
Yeah.
Let's talk about miscarriage. And so you are not alone. That is so common.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it feel any better, of course, to be like, everybody has a miscarriage kind of
Yeah.
answer. But how has this situation impacted you in your identity as a mom?
Oh, yeah. The thing about miscarriage and infertility and all of these kind of things is nothing is left untouched.
Mm-hmm.
This affects your family unit. This affects the dreams that you had for your family. It impacts your body, your mind, your spirit, your finances, your
Mm-hmm.
calendar. Like I said, if you have plans to have the most important meeting of your life, you move it or you don't. And so but one of those places it does go to is your identity. This real intense feeling of failure of what did I do? Is it my fault?
Yeah.
Even though it's not your fault. There's nothing you could have done. The vast majority of miscarriages have to do with chromosomal abnormalities that you may never even get to know about. And there is that feeling of failure that did I do something, of not being able to give my husband the family that we dreamed about, the family we talked about, the family we planned for, not being able to give my daughter siblings. She wants to know why God is giving her friends another brother or sister when she asked him for one
Mm.
before the first sibling was born. And she wants to know why.
Yeah.
And I don't have a great answer for her.
Yeah.
And so that is one of the ways it's affected identity. And people also really don't know what to do with you. like,
Yeah.
like they don't know what to do. Like, they want to be helpful, but they don't want to overstep, which I can appreciate. Listen, we're all just people doing the best we can.
Mm.
They want to be helpful. They don't want to overstep. They want to acknowledge your grief, but also they didn't know this person.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways with miscarriage and a lot of families, you're the only people who know, or
Mm-hmm.
only a very small number of people know, especially in the beginning, especially if it was an early loss. You haven't
Yeah.
gotten to the point of making these type of announcements. And not, it's very difficult to call your best friend to tell her you had a miscarriage before you were even going to tell her you were pregnant.
Yeah.
They're really weird conversations. And so you also don't really know what to do with yourself. It's this weird, I don't know how to do this. And so really just telling God, I don't know how to do this. And
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have to show me how to do this. Yeah.
It's also really difficult. It changes the dynamic of relationships
For
when
sure.
there's someone battling this infertility
Yeah.
and someone in a family who's not. It is such a difficult conversation to navigate and to honor the loss of, like you said, a child that nobody knew. You knew him because your mom and you were carrying him or her. And nobody's really talking about that. And I'm sure that those flippant answers of, oh, everybody has a miscarriage, or oh, I did too. Oh, you'll get pregnant. It's fine.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
can be really hard, I'm sure, for you to hear from other
Yeah.
people. And speaking of that, speaking to people's best intentions, what are some
Yeah.
of the lies? You said, okay, this really makes me feel like a failure. Like I'm not delivering what was promised in this marriage
Yeah.
and these dreams aren't coming true anymore. What are some of the lies, Kayla, that you've had to reject in this season? Okay, what do I have to be like, that's a lie, that's not truth. So what are the lies you're
Yeah.
rejecting and what is the truth that you're clinging to?
Yeah. I think the biggest one is that it's all up to me. That it depend that if I just do XYZ good enough, or if I just work hard enough, I think ironically it's also one of the reasons I've been called to creative type work is
Mm.
because I don't actually control the outcome of that either.
Yeah.
Like I can
Yeah.
write the best words on planet Earth and there's no guarantee that anyone will read them. I can put
Mm.
out the best podcast and I can't make anybody listen. I can
Mm.
be the world's greatest speaker and I'm not guaranteed an invitation to anybody's stage, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so it's this idea that if I just work hard enough, I can make this work out. That's not
Yeah.
true in this creative
Mhm.
work. And it's not true in building a family either. That if I just do enough, that I can make this happen. No, I can't. The truth of that is that I don't actually know why God does the things that he does.
Mm.
I don't know. I remember after one of our treatment cycles, one of my favorite nurse practitioners said, I don't understand why this isn't working. And I was like, that makes me feel great.
Yeah.
But she said,
Yeah.
she's like, we can see it happening. Like we can see the perfect egg is right there. And we know we've got the best and the brightest sperm right here. And I got them as close as I could together. And there's no reason
Mm.
why this isn't working. And she told me that there are actually some research that she got to be a part of. And this was really just more exploratory research to see what would happen. They didn't draw too many conclusions from this, but she said there were cases where they would take, you have this really healthy egg and these really healthy sperm, and they would put them in a petri dish or a test tube.
Mm.
And most of the time you could watch under a microscope, you could watch them combine under that microscope. But
Wow.
every once in a while, you'd have the perfect egg and the perfect sperm and they would not combine. And there was no
Interesting.
scientific reason why that would she's we're looking at it and they just won't. And so she said, I don't understand why this is not happening. And I didn't say it out loud to her. Hindsight, I could have, or maybe should have. But my thought was like, it's the hand of God. That's really the only explanation that we have.
Mm.
Yes, we do the work. Yes, we do the best that we can. Yes, we are
Mhm.
responsible for the actions that we take, the steps we take, all of those things for sure. And control and results don't belong to us. We don't get to be the one who makes this happen.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the lies is that I can make this work out. If I just work
Mhm.
hard enough, if I just be good enough, I can make this happen. No, I
Yeah.
can't. I can't make
Mhm.
any of this work out. Yeah. And so that has been one of the biggest is that it's all up to me.
Yeah.
And the reality is I'm responsible for what I do with the things that God puts in my hands. And he is responsible for the results for what he does with that. I can't manipulate the hand of God by being good enough or
Yeah.
working hard enough or doing enough. And some people would tell you that you just didn't believe enough. Disagree.
Mm.
Disagree. This is not a lack of belief. I have a mountain of receipts, if you'd like to see them, of where I've put
Mhm.
my heart and my body and my money where my faith was.
Mhm.
Like, I
Mhm.
showed up here and I believed that he could and would do it, and he didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And what happens when people over spiritualize this and almost use this as a weapon against you? If you
Oh,
you
yeah.
just keep praying, you just
Oh,
keep
yeah.
praying. It's really, yes, we know God is in control, and it's making him the bad guy though, and
That's
you the
exactly
bad
what
guy.
it
Like
does.
you again,
Hmm.
you didn't do enough. You didn't pray enough. You didn't worship enough.
Yeah.
And it's creating him as a transactional God.
Yeah.
You and I actually spoke earlier this week because you interviewed me for your podcast and we talked about
Yeah.
him being a genie in a bottle,
That's
you know?
exactly it.
And so really having to stand firm to the truth of he's not a genie in a bottle, he's in control, and combating the lies that sound really good and really
Oh,
spiritual.
yeah.
Like if you just read more, if you just pray more, if you just do more, if you just had bigger faith. Kayla, if
Yeah.
your faith was bigger,
Oh,
God would
yeah.
do better.
Yeah.
R- That's a really dangerous place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's real dangerous. And
Hmm.
it makes me really sad for people who don't know him very well already. And these are the things that they're told. And these are the
Hmm.
things that they hear. Because it also, too, puts the brokenness of the world on God. Like,
Mm.
the world is broken, our bodies are broken. Ultimately, he's the redeemer in the
Yeah.
story. He is not the breaker, if you will,
Mm.
of all things broken. And so, when we do that, when we over spiritualize, when we put this on, if you would just do XYZ, then God would deliver ABC. No, God has given me the fullness of his son. And that is ultimately where he heal my body? Of course he can. I hope he does. I ask him to. And sometimes the miracle is that he does it and you're still here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. How has, I'm going to go back to this egg and
sure.
sperm.
Yeah,
How have you and your husband processed this together? Because again, I've witnessed this in our family and I've had
yeah.
friends also. This can be really hard on a marriage. How have y'all processed to get this together, and has it changed your relationship?
Yeah, I think in the beginning when it was taking a while, he was like, whatever, it'll be fine, it'll happen. The longer it goes on and the older we get, he has gotten to a place of acceptance much faster than I have. And I think too, and this is really a gift that he has and that he's given me that I don't know that all couples get to experience. He very much acknowledges that yes, it's our family, but I'm the one bearing the bulk of this.
Yeah.
You know, that I'm the one taking the pills. I'm the one doing the shots. I'm the one he has to show up for one appointment. I
Yeah.
have to show up for all of them.
Yeah.
He had to do, even when we were doing our testing, we were doing all of our blood draws and things together, and he had multiple tubes of blood taken. And then it was my turn, and she gets out like 10 more tubes. And
Mm.
she was like, sorry, it's way more for mom. And I was like, oh, of course
Of
it is.
course.
Let's put
Hmm.
that on our tab. And so he is very aware that I physically am the one bearing a lot of this. I do think for a lot of dads, and obviously I'm not a dad, so I can't speak for them, but I do know in a lot of our conversations, this is something that he cannot fix. He
Yeah.
can fix a lot. He
Yeah.
he can fix a lot, and he works really hard to make sure our daughter and I have an amazing life, but he cannot fix this. He cannot
Mm.
just make this work out. And so I think that is difficult. It's difficult in a marriage, and I think this is true of any kind of grief when you grieve differently.
Yeah.
Processing things differently for men and women is hard, and it does impact your marriage. There was a time that it felt harder than it does now.
Yeah.
But I will say on this side of it, I do think it has actually, in a weird way, as only God can with the hard things in our lives, it has made our marriage stronger. It has helped us know that, hey, we don't actually have to get everything we want
Yeah.
to still have a really good life together. A lot of these things that we planned and we dreamed are not going to turn out the way that we hoped they did. We can
Mhm.
be sad about that, and we can be a little mad about that.
Sure.
And also, we still have a really good marriage and a really good family, and God has taken care of us. A lot of couples don't make it, particularly
Yeah.
after infertility. A lot of couples don't make it because it is brutal in
Yeah.
every way. But God has been kind, and
Hmm.
I have a really excellent husband, and I'm really grateful.
Yeah. That's really sweet that he's given you the space to, and he understands. He's open to understanding how much
Yeah,
harder this is on you,
yeah, for sure.
and holding that with gentle hands. You talked a little bit about your faith, and you've
Yeah,
mentioned that you know that God is in control. How has faith influenced your perspective
yeah,
and your approach to this challenge?
yeah. Yeah, first, our faith has impacted the treatment options that we are willing to pursue. I think God does miracles of all kinds, and I think that includes modern medicine. I do think that God can use any form of modern medicine to do miracles, and I've seen him do
Hmm.
it. And I also know the boundaries he's put me in, right?
Mm.
And so I think there are certain things, and I tell this story, it's a silly example, but a few years ago, I loved a certain television show. And by loved, I planned a certain night of the week around it. This is what we're doing. And I loved it. And it had less than great themes, let's just say, less than great themes. And so one night I'm watching a season finale of this and I'm loving it. And I very clearly heard the Holy Spirit say, and that will be enough of that.
Oh,
And I was like, oh no,
yeah,
we
you're
have
not taking
at
that.
least one or two more seasons to go, Lord. Oh no. But I was like, Lord, like this friend all know you and they watch it because we talk about it. And he
Yeah.
was like, he said, I'm not talking to them, I'm talking to you. And I'm telling you,
Mm.
we are done here. And I was like, I don't know. And sure enough, that was the last episode of that show I ever watched. But I won't name the show. And the
Mm.
reason I won't name the show, I'll name it like to close people, but I won't name the show. And the reason for that is that was between me and God.
Yeah.
That was not an edict for everyone,
Mhm.
right? And so I won't name the show for that reason. Same idea is with fertility treatments. These are much bigger scale decisions than a television show. But there are things that he told me that this is not where we're to go.
Mm.
And so our faith has impacted what we're willing to do, what we're not willing to do. And he could tell me tomorrow, okay, the
Yeah.
season is now. This is what we're moving ahead. But for today and in this season, he has been pretty clear about the routes that he wants us to take and not take. I have not always liked that answer.
Hmm.
I have wanted a
Yeah.
different answer. I have wanted to do things differently. But that
Sure.
is certainly how our faith has impacted that. And knowing that God is in control and that he doesn't make bad things happen. Like
Mm.
both of these things can be true. I think a lot of times we want to hold God responsible for the brokenness of the world,
Hmm.
because we understand that he's in control and he's sovereign. So ultimately, that means the buck stops with him. And if the buck stops with him, then he could do something about this and this, and he could fix this and this. And
Hmm.
he's not. And we want an answer for that. And so, yes, that is true. He is ultimately over all of it. And what's also true is we are not to the full resurrection and restoration of all the broken things yet.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we do get sick. Sometimes babies do die. Sometimes we can't have more children. Sometimes you
Yeah.
insert your broken situation here. And so there is a temptation to blame God because he
Hmm.
could fix it. He
Hmm.
could make it right and he could do this differently. But instead of blame, choosing to lean into that and just being honest with him about it and saying, hey, you could fix this. You could make all this right. And just letting him sit with you in that and being honest about it and not being afraid to say that to him. I think sometimes we filter our prayers. We try to guzzy them up a little bit or make them
Yeah.
sound a little better. And I think that comes from mostly a good place. We want to be reverent. We want to be respectful of who God
Mm-hmm.
is and all those things. Yeah, that's all absolutely good and right. But sometimes we drift into being dishonest in our prayer lives because we're like, maybe I don't say that part because that feels rude or
Mm-hmm.
that feels disrespectful or that feels unkind. Certainly have appropriate awe and reverence. But if we look through the Psalms, we see a third of the Psalms are lament. It's a lot of asking
Right.
questions of how long are you going to let this happen? And hey,
Yeah.
do you see these people over here doing horrible things and still prospering, Lord? Do you even see what's happening over here? It's a lot of these type questions. And so I think because we have that in scripture, we're invited to ask. We're
Yeah.
invited to bring that and then just let him sit with you in it instead of demanding that he give you an answer quickly because answers don't usually come quickly. I
Yeah.
think about Moses when and God calls Moses and Moses says, "Who am I supposed to tell him sent me?" And God says, "I am who I am." And he says, "I can't do this because of this and this." And he starts
Right.
naming all these reasons he's not qualified. God never says, "Moses, you're the man for the job.
Mm-mm.
You've got it." And he never affirms Moses. He affirms
No.
himself and
Yeah.
says, "I will be with you."
Yeah.
And so I think leaning into that and knowing that this is not, God is not here to affirm me and my giftings and my ability to endure and my hard
Mm-hmm.
work and all. That's not the promise here, is that he's with me always, even in
Mm-hmm.
this.
Yeah. And I think that's an encouragement for any of the listeners or any mom who is facing this or who has been there is really the unfiltered prayers,
Yeah.
the honesty with the Lord. And it's okay to wrestle through this.
Oh, yeah.
That's not uncommon. It's needed because if you sit in the wrestling and you give him a minute, you're going to realize he is sovereign, he is in control, and he is doing the very best for you. It's not like he's cherry picked you and said, you know what, this is the struggle I want Kayla to have, and let's see if she can
Yeah.
rise up to the occasion. This isn't how he works. And so I want to ask this last, I have two final questions. And the first
Sure.
one is, if you could go back and speak to yourself at the start of this journey,
Yeah.
what would you say?
That's a great question. Part of me wants to warn her, and part of me is really glad I didn't know. So, would I tell her? Would I not tell her? I think God is really merciful in only letting us see one day at a time.
Yeah. Oh, isn't that the
Because
truth?
if we, when you think about the hardest seasons of your life, they almost always last significantly longer than you hoped or prayed they would, right?
Sure.
And so if you knew that from, part of me says, if I knew that from the beginning, then I could go in knowing, hey, this is going to be long, it's going to be hard, but once I get to X date, I, if I can just get there. And I think that's the hardest part, is there is no end date to a
Mm-hmm.
lot of this. There is no final, when X happens, I'll know I've made it, or I'll know it's over, or there is none of that. And so part of me wishes I could tell her, like, hey, this is going to get long. Part of me is really glad I didn't know. And so I think what I would tell her, and Courtney, it goes back to what you were talking about, wrestling with God. When you, one, choose to engage in the wrestle, don't be afraid of the wrestle, choose to lean into that. And two, when you're wrestling, you're still hanging on to God and he's
Yeah.
still hanging on to you. And so you have to be physically holding someone to
Mm-hmm.
wrestle with them and for them to wrestle with you. And really, you've been held all along and you will
Mm-hmm.
be. Even if sometimes the holding on is going to leave you worn completely out and
Mm-hmm.
exhausted and just really tired. I think that's one of the hardest parts, is it just lasts so long. It
Yeah.
just lasts so long. And I think the main things I would tell her, as I've processed all of this with you, Courtney, is to one, hang on. It's going to get long, but just hang on. And two, don't panic. Don't
Mm-hmm.
panic. Don't drop everything in the dark that you knew to be true when it was light.
Mm-hmm.
Just hang on and don't just throw it all out. You're going to have to throw some of it out There are some things, and listen, we all have lies that we have believed about ourselves, about how the world works, about God, who he is, how he works. And some of that we are going to have to let go of. But I think that comes with the wrestle of holding on to him,
Yeah.
is we can let go of that other stuff.
So good. So good. I end every show asking, is there something you're praying for?
Yeah.
And can we join you in that prayer? And do you have a scripture that you would share with us?
Yeah. Yeah. I think what I'm praying for at this point is I'm praying for joy,
Mm,
that our joy would be restored. And so I think about Psalm 126, 5 and 6, that says that those that sow in tears will reap in joy. And there have been a lot of tears, so I know joy is coming. Sometimes it looks different than we thought it would.
yeah.
And so being willing to, and this is part of the serenity prayer that we often leave this part off. It's accepting things as they are, not as you think they should be or wish
Mm,
they would be. And I think that's true for every hard season of motherhood, whether that is infertility or loss or parenting a child through something awful, is accepting things the way that they are and not the way that I would have done it, not the
mm,
way that I think it should be. Because I have a lot of ideas about how my life should go, how my kids' life should go, but ultimately being able to trust the Lord with that. And in doing so, I know that He will be true to His word and
mm,
that joy is coming. So
yeah.
that's my prayer.
I'm going to close us now and I'm going to ask you, would you close us in prayer?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, God, I'm so grateful for this time with my friend Courtney and God for each of her listeners. I thank you for the opportunity to tell more of who you are. And God, I pray that my story would always tell of who you are. I pray for the woman listening who has lost, God, that she would know that you are there. You were there then, you are here now. And there's never been a moment where you were not with her, that you see and when you care when nobody else does. You have caught every tear we've ever cried in the shower or in the car when we were pretending and hid it from everybody else. God, you saw and you knew and you care. And God, I just pray for each woman listening, God, that we would get to see your goodness here in the land of the living and that you would restore to us the joy of our salvation. God, you said that those who sow in tears will reap in joy. And so we are trusting that even now that we can't see it, you are growing a harvest of joy in us and through us and for us. We love you, Jesus, and we say all this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Kayla, for your story, for your vulnerability, and your encouragement. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend. This was great.
Thanks so much for listening to The Mom Show with Courtney Doyle. Remember to check the show notes for any links, books, or resources that are mentioned in each episode. We want to be sure this blesses other mothers, and in order to do this, if you're listening via podcast, be sure that you like and share. If you could write a review, that would be fantastic. It helps us get in front of other moms. If you're watching via YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button. This way, you won't ever miss an episode. We want to make sure that we increase our reach to other mothers who need a little encouragement, a community, and a whole lot of Jesus. We're so glad you're here.